Welcome back to the program. With me now, Ben Oquist from the Australia Institute and David Gazzard, long-time Liberal advisor. And David, I want to start by saying this IR package, is it an ambit claim from the government in terms of what it's proposing?
No, I don't think so.
Because the Labor Party is saying it's basically Armageddon. As my colleague Andrew Clennell said earlier, the government says it's nothing. Where is it?
Take me back to work choices. That's what they want. Look, this has been coming for a while. There's nothing really that surprises me in any of this. The government has flagged it wants to get more people back to work, and it's come out with, a plan that actually makes things more flexible. Sally McManus has been in Canberra for some time. She went through quarantine. Before the roundtables ended, she was talking about how the government was going to attack workers' rights before she'd seen legislation. On cue, the Labor Party has picked up everything that Sally says and now is running it up into the parliament. But what have we just come through? We've come through 6-8 months of the Labor Party talking about how many people are out of work, how JobKeeper has to be extended, how JobSeeker has to be extended. It's got to be made bigger. Now when the government's saying, well, hang on, money doesn't grow on trees. We actually need to get more people back into work. We agree unemployment is too high. Let's make it possible for employers to take workers on. Suddenly we're back to Armageddon. So I don't think it's Armageddon. I don't think it's an ambit claim. I think it's just a sensible, rational way to get people back to the workplace.
Reading from this, the bill, the Better Off Overall test, it's part 5 of this Fair Work Amendment Bill, which was introduced today, and it says basically that if a business has been impacted by coronavirus, known as COVID-19 according to the legislation, if there's an impact on the enterprise or enterprises to which the agreement relates, then they can have this exception, basically, from the Better Off Overall test. So what that means is a business can then pay a worker underneath the award if they're affected by COVID. Labor and the unions are saying every business has been affected by COVID.
Well, not, some more than others. I heard you talking about dive shops, tourist industries. These are businesses that are on their knees and they need assistance in getting workers back. There's the choice if a worker wants to come back on. There's a range of provisions to provide more certainty around casual labour. All of this is going to help both workers, people needing jobs, and the places that need to employ them. Australia is a high-cost wages country. We can all agree with that. So this is a way of using an exemption that was put in the legislation and given to the Fair Work Commission to actually arbitrate over, to grant greater flexibility to get people back into jobs. And that's what I think most people want.
Is this Labor trying to reheat work choices?
No.
I put that to Tony Burke earlier. It certainly feels like they're trying to, embrace this political fight with all they can.
Well, I think the government has given them something to campaign on, that's for sure. The opposition's got a spring in their step, haven't they? And why wouldn't they? When the government went through this process where we're all meant to get together, unions, employers, 150 hours, and I saw you playing that clip with Andrew Clennell earlier, where Christian Porter couldn't seem to answer the question about why this idea hadn't come up in the 150 hours of discussion. So what's the point of going through all that? Remember, we had this great spirit of let's work together, we're all in this together, let's find solutions. Now something's pulled out of the hat that does take away workers' rights potentially, and in a kind of permanent ongoing way. And this idea that it's just a COVID thing, as you just pointed out, any business that's affected, well or badly, can use these provisions for the next 2 years. Then the agreements can run for 4. Then those agreements can keep going if they're not supplanted by something. But big picture, where I think this totally goes wrong economically, I think this is economic vandalism, because the last thing we need now is to be trying to cut wages. We've had the lowest wage growth on record when wages have been flatlining at the strongest rate since the Second World War. 0.1%
But what about the
in the
businesses
September
like
quarter.
the dive company on the Great Barrier Reef, something like that, where to stay afloat, they need to say to people, look, you've got to take a haircut if we're going to keep everyone on?
Well, if we go down that path of chasing lower wages, we're going to sabotage the economy overall. We went into this recession knowing that the lack of wage growth was one of the fundamental problems that was making our economy weaker, not stronger. The reality is, here's the stat. Business profits are at a record share of GDP. Normally they've been up high at 25 or 26%. Now they're at 31%. So we've had a massive increase in profits. Profits is not the overall problem. So to come in now and say, look, here's a method of cutting wages, I think is economic vandalism. In the end, that dive shop, the Bunnings, Woolworths, all of them depend upon demand, and we've got to keep aggregate demand up. And I think that's why the line from Labor has worked so well.
Well, there is a disconnect between the profit share and the wage share. There's no doubt about that. That's a vulnerability for the government if, and it's a big if, but if Labor can get its act together.
Yeah, there's no doubt the government's mindful, and this is part of the debate all the way leading through last year about sluggish wages growth. But we're coming out of a recession. This is a global crisis. We've just spent the last 8 months in here talking about how severe the recession would be and whether the government's support programs are going to get us to the other side, this bridge to the other side. Money just doesn't grow on trees. You can't keep sending money to employees and paying enormously high wages comparative overseas. I mean, it doesn't work. You've got to have more flexibility, particularly now. And it's exemption that is not permanent. It's there designed to be administered by Fair Work Australia to get people back to work.
Do you think the government will compromise eventually, though, take a few of the harder edges off this?
Yeah, I think it'll be reviewed down the track. I mean, that's exactly what it's supposed to be done.
But no, employees, in the Senate committee before the bill's passed.
Oh, look, I don't know. I don't know that.
It sounds like the government's open to that.
Yeah, look, they'll go into this. I mean, they don't want to have another work choices debate, but I think they're very mindful. What's the one thing that's been driving the debate over the last while? It's jobs. It's getting investment out there. It's stimulating the economy with infrastructure. It's making the economy more productive. But first and foremost, it's getting people back to work.
We're almost out of time, Ben, but you wrap it up.
Aggregate demand, that's the problem. We need to be lifting consumer spending. And I think that's why...
But you can't do that by continually pump prime.
You can't do that by continually cutting wages. It does the opposite. And I think that's why Labor's line has worked today and been the cut-through line. The government's saying, great, the economy is rebounding, the recovery is on, but at the same time, we've got to put in these drastic measures to cut wages. It's not gelling.
Ben Oquist, David Gazzard, gents, talk to you soon.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
Wages are growing at their slower, sustained pace.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.